Jai Baba. Mind stopped is God. Mind working is man. Mind working fast is mad. Mind slowed down is must. Meher Baba. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Thanks to beloved Baba for making us all meet in his love, in his remembrance. And Jai Baba to all of you for being so eager to know what Baba has written in his own hands. We are doing the book called In God's Hands, and I see a few new faces today. So just want to recap very briefly that this is a very unique book, perhaps the only book in the universe where we are able to get first-hand handwriting of the Lord himself, of the avatar himself, and where we are going to get first-hand information about what Baba has to say about himself as God, about himself as the God-man, and also about the different creatures in his creation. So far what we have done, I'll just very briefly wrap it up in my own language, of course. Baba says that there is nothing but God, that God is the only reality, that all else that seems real is illusory, it's an illusion. Baba says that God is in everything and in everyone, and he is also aloof from or beyond everyone and everything. In his own manner, Baba has given a sort of a formula where Baba talks about natural light. Now, this is his creation, so we are following that. Basically, what natural light means is the real I or the self or God or Paramatma or mind stopped. Mind stopped is the real mind. This is what Baba says. And also Baba says, now that we have done it, I can say this, that it is sound sleep in awake state. That means in this awake state, that particular soul or the spirit experiences the experience of sound sleep in awake state. That is the meaning of natural light or God or real I or self. Sorry, that's I said beyond. I said that. Aloof from and beyond. Three bonus. Swamiya is dictating, rather prompting me to say, three bonus se nara, nyara. That phrase has caught up. Ek Ram Tribhuvan se nyara. That is the Kabir's Doha where Baba says, you know, Ek Ram Dasrat gar dole, Ek Ram ghat ghat me bole, Ek Ram का सकल पसारा एक राम त्रिभुवन से नारा. One Ram is in the body, the same Ram is in the mind, the same Ram is in the spirit, which is all pervading everywhere, and ek Ram, it is beyond all these things. So that, okay. Then Baba talks about natural darkness, and Baba says that natural darkness is the astitva or the existence of natural light, that is equal to spirit, that is equal to the nothingness, that is equal to the khuda, which means in the sound sleep state. So here Baba says that natural light and natural darkness move together, move hand in hand. Natural darkness, one of the attributes of natural darkness is the spirit, and the spirit sees the self or the real I or God all the time. One sector. Other side, Baba talks about unnatural darkness. Unnatural darkness, which means mind working or the false limited I or egoism. And when Baba says mind working, It could be in the awake state as we all are right now, or it could also be in the dream state when we go to sleep and we dream. Baba also talks about unnatural darkness as ignorance. Baba talks about unnatural darkness as banda. Banda means slave. And from unnatural darkness comes out what Baba calls unnatural light. Now, what is unnatural light? All this that we experience, the body, the universe, the experiences of the body and universe, everything Maya. So when unnatural darkness starts functioning, that means when the mind starts functioning, it creates unnatural light, which means it has the experience of the body and the universe and everything about Maya. Then Baba goes on to say that when we go to sleep, what happens is that the unnatural darkness, which means the mind, which is working, merges or becomes one temporarily with the natural darkness, which means the spirit. The mind and the spirit gets joined when we go to sleep. In other words, in sound sleep state or deep sleep state where I am, but the mind is not functioning. Temporarily, it is stopped. Temporarily, mind you. At that time, I am one with God in the Paratpar Parbrahma state, which is God in the beyond state. I actually am one with God in my sound sleep state. Then Baba goes on to say that when we start the process of awakening, waking up, the false wake up as we say, it passes through the dream state and then we start with the thinking mind or the working mind. What happens at that time is that the spirit, we have done the spirit as natural darkness, becomes the mind and experiences the body and the universe. The same spirit, when with the same mind, when it merges with the spirit, experiences the sound sleep state, but the same spirit now becomes the mind, merges with the mind, becomes the mind, and experiences the body and the universe. Right now, our spirit is experiencing through our limited mind all that we are talking, speaking, hearing, blah, 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 whatever it is. Then Baba goes on to say that the goal is that the mind should permanently merge with the spirit. Permanently. Every single day when we go into sound sleep state, it is not a permanent merger because the mind still has limited factor. False I is there. So in order to do that, Baba says, the mind has to cross over 7 bridges. That means the 7 planes of consciousness. And then Baba goes on to say that as you gradually concentrate or as your samskara, this is how I understand, becomes rarer and rarer, rarefied, becomes finer, fine-tuned, becomes loose, becomes not important, so to speak, but becomes less and less powerful, impactful. That is how you go from the gross world to the first plane, to the second plane, to the third plane. We'll come to that. And finally, when the mind is totally stopped, then that same finite, limited mind becomes the unlimited mind. That means the mind is transformed from being finite and limited to being infinite and unlimited. And now since the mind has merged with the spirit and the spirit has always been seeing God, so now the mind can say, I see God everywhere and in everything. In other words, the mind is totally the false mind, the finite mind is totally annihilated and it has become one with the spirit, and that is God realization. In other words, Baba says the body and the universe must exist because when you go into a sound sleep state, The body and the universe is not there. I mean, what I'm trying to say is the experience of the body and the universe is not there when you go to a sound sleep state. There also the merger is there, but that is only temporary. But in the awake state, like how we are right now awake, if in the awake state, that means the body is there, the universe is there, but the mind is not there, then that is God realization. Then that is the meaning of God realization, or in other words, it is experiencing the sound sleep state in awake state. So far I have tried to cover up the major aspects. Is there anything you want to ask at this juncture, or shall I ask Soumya to continue with the reading? I have tried to explain. Anybody has anything to ask so far?
No questions.
Cyrus,
Yes, Aban.
mind stopped is as good as mind Manonash?
Yes. It is as good as Manonash, it is God. Mind stopped is God.
Okay.
Mind no
Thank
Nash. Nash means annihilation, complete. Okay? So correct. Mind
Thank you.
stopped. That's why we started with the prayer, mind stopped is
Yeah.
God. These are Baba's words.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else has anything to ask?
Yeah, Bobby as Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby, go ahead.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, in when we're sleeping in sound
Yes.
sleep state,
Yes.
you're connected to the natural darkness at that time.
Right.
Only when you're in sound sleep in awake state
Right.
that you're in natural light.
Right.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So in other words, natural light also has one additional line. You can edit that. Sound sleep in awake state is natural light. Nita had done up a chart, but this time it has not happened. Doesn't matter. But more or less, each one is following their own pattern. So now, any more questions, or shall we go ahead? All right. Now, Soumya will start reading from page number.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Cyrus ji, can you give 2-3 synonyms for natural darkness?
What I would not like to give synonyms, but I would like to say what Baba has said. For natural darkness,
Yes, please.
it is the astitva or existence of natural light. It is also called the spirit, which is sakala parasa, which means all pervading. Pasara, which is everywhere. It is also called the nothingness. It is also as of the dictionary. You see, what we are using is Baba's terminology we are using. My connection is again giving some problem. I don't know. Anyway, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
then go ahead.
Yes, we can hear
go.
you.
Jai Baba. Go ahead.
Voice is breaking again.
Page
No,
number 22.
proper. Voice is proper. Cyrus, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm reading from page number 21 because this is
Okay,
spillover.
okay. No, doesn't
Now-
matter. Don't change.
Now, let it be, Amrita. Amrita, it's okay. Now, between the working mind and the stopped mind, that is between false limited I and false unlimited
I had last time said that Baba is still using the false unlimited I, right? He is not, in later works, he has said that the I or the ego is the real thing and it is never annihilated, it is transformed from the false I to the real I. But since we are following this book and this terminology, this vocabulary, Baba says there is a transference from the false limited I to the false unlimited I. Go ahead.
That is, between the mind and the spirit, there are 7 stages, 7 planes, 7 bhuvan.
Bhuvan means the worlds.
7 worlds.
Yeah.
When the working limited mind has to become unworking unlimited mind, it has to undergo the process of concentration.
Now here Baba says he is focusing on the word concentration, the process of concentration. He does not explain what that means. But in our limited understanding, I would say that the focus or the concentration, that I am not the body, I am not the mind, that I am something else. That when you are focusing on the real I or the real self, then automatically the samskaras gradually wean away. They just fall off. And as you concentrate more and more on that, the samskaras, because of starvation, because of non-utilizing that and not implementing that, they just go away or they just fall off. This is my understanding of what concentration Baba talks about.
By gradual concentration, the limited mind gradually, gradual, gradually
Gradually.
breaks off its limit, and as the limit is gradually broken, the planes are gradually experienced by it.
That means the mind, which was totally initially focused on the gross or the sthul, as we call it, sthul jagat. I'm mixing up the other literature also so that we understand, is now concentrated, and gradually it experiences, the mind experiences, of course, through the spirit, or the spirit experiences through the mind rather, that I am not this physical body. I am not gross. I am not sthul. I am urja. I am energy. And it takes the first step into the first plane of consciousness, which is where the subtle plane begins. The sukshma bhumika begins from the first plane of consciousness.
The more the mind is concentrated, the more it advances in the planes. And when concentration reaches its highest state, the mind is eventually stopped.
Entirely
Sorry,
stopped.
Baba.
The mind
Entirely
is entirely stopped. That means gradually the mind experiences the first plane, and then the second, and then the fourth, and then the fifth. And finally, when the mind is totally stopped, manonash, as we say, mind stopped, mind annihilated, that is where there is no mind, and it has now become the spirit. The mind has now become the spirit and experiences God and says, I am God.
That is, all its limits have been broken. That is, it has now become unlimited, and the mind stopped. That is, unlimited is realizing God every moment.
That means once the mind totally stops, annihilated completely, it realizes God every moment. That means that particular soul has become God realized.
So, the mind now realizes
Self.
self. The yogis have different methods of making the mind stop, but it all comes to concentration. So, by the process of concentration is the goal gained. But the concentration must reach such a stage as to make the mind stop. This is very difficult process, and it takes a very, very long time, because the mind, if it succeeds in concentrating a little, to it is manifested the first plane, which so interests it that it gets concentrated on that only.
In our case, we are all, I assume, God, a gross conscious human being. We are so attracted with the aspects of the gross beauty, and the gross which everything, that we get sucked into it. And that is why we have the desires, we have the cravings, we have the longings, and all kinds of attachment only to the gross. Now Baba says that as you concentrate and enters the first plane of consciousness, which itself is a difficult task, but if you do enter the first plane of consciousness, there are attractions of the first plane of consciousness which are so superior or stupendous as compared to the gross plane, that instead of concentrating further and instead of moving further, we concentrate on the sights and sounds and beauties and attachments of the first plane of consciousness, and we tend to get stuck into that rather than moving further towards our goal.
And if it, by the grace of the Guru or its
By
sanskar,
its sanskaras.
by its sanskaras
Sanskaras.
concentrates more, the second plane is manifested, and here the chances of its concentrating further
Change the page, please. Becomes even less.
becomes even less.
That means
Becomes
what?
less.
Yeah, right. No, the correction here is anyway becomes less. What Baba is trying to say is that we find the attraction of the gross so much difficult to be detached from, whereas the moment you go to first, it has much more stupendous, much more beautiful experiences that we tend to get caught up in that. But if we focus and do go to the second plane of consciousness, which is a more deeper plane of the subtle world, which means of Shukshma Bhumika, which means you get so much of urja, energy, power, riddhi siddhi, that you can do a lot of miracles and chamatkar, that you get enmeshed in those playthings, in those toys, and you start experimenting with those toys. You know how children love to play with toys, different types of toys. In the same way, as you enter the second plane, you get more access to these powers, and you get more tempted to use those powers. And that is why Baba says that it becomes even more difficult to move further. And the same holds good for other planes of consciousness.
And also in each plane, either scenes or surroundings or powers are so manifested to the mind that it, becoming attached there, does not want to concentrate more.
See, we get into a very lackadaisical state, or we feel so comforting to be in that state where you have the experience of being all powerful. You know, you get the experience, everything is at your hand. You know, you can do a lot of miracles, you can do so many things, you can do change so many things, and therefore the soul may get a feeling that I have already become one with the goal, that I am God myself and I can do anything that I want. And so you stop concentrating further, and you are likely to get stuck in those planes. And one of the worst planes to be stuck on is the fourth plane of consciousness, where Baba says it is like a threshold between the subtle world and the mental world, where you have access to all the powers to a point where you can create new life, you can create new universes, you can bring back people who are dead, you know, dead, you can bring them back to life. In the third plane, you can bring back things which are pre-human, like animals, birds, fishes, etc. You can just wish it and they can get back to life. Dead, I mean dead animals, dead birds. That is on the third plane. But on the fourth plane, you can even bring back to life a dead human being. And yet, you are not perfect. That is what is important. You are not at all perfect. You are still far away from the goal of becoming God. So what Baba is trying to say is that these planes have got tremendous influence on our mind. They are so enchanting, they are so attractive, they are so seducing in a sense, that you just want to play around with those playthings and you stop concentrating to move further. Unless, of course, you have the able hand of a living perfect master or the avatar, who's the eternal living perfect master. Then he will somehow push you, or he will blindfold you, or he will do certain things which will not make you get stuck up in those planes.
Only in a rare case, by the
Throughout.
throughout help of a perfect realized Salik Guru, is a mind made to cross all the stages of concentration, that is, it's experiencing all the seven planes, and finally made to stop and realize self.
So Baba says that you can make this journey, which is known as the involutionary journey or the inner journey, going within yourself. You can do that through concentration, but it is fraught with danger. You can be misled, you can get stuck, and therefore, if you have the helping hand of a living Baba uses the word here, perfect realized Salik Guru. Of course, later on, Baba has even uh, differentiated between a Salik and a perfect master or a Sadguru or a Kutub. He has differentiated. But at this stage, sometime in 1925-26, where Baba has not differentiated that, he has used the word perfect realized Salik Guru. That means a God realized master can help you to go through all the seven planes in a jiffy, in just a split of a second, you can do that. Uh, so, in other words, what Baba is trying to say is that a need for a living perfect master, I repeat, a living perfect master or the avatar. Now, since we are all in the love orbit of the avatar, he is the eternal living perfect master, which means whether he is in form or he is not in the form, that means he is not in the body, still he can help us if he feels that we are qualified to walk that particular inner spiritual path, also known as the tariqat, also known as the involutionary journey, also known as the path to God realization.
In realizing self, no planes, no experiences, no manifestation, but the one infinite light, Prakash, light that is self. Now,
Now,
if a
that means once you realize God, there is no question of any plane, any this, any that. You experience Aham Brahmasmi. I am God state, Anal Haq. And that is why Baba repeatedly says, except for the experience of God realization, all experiences, howsoever profound, howsoever deep, howsoever enchanting, howsoever enlightening, howsoever whatever illuminating, are in the domain of illusion. And it has in itself no value, no value, except if you use that experience as a springboard for you to propel towards the goal, then it has experience. Otherwise, if I say, oh, I closed my eyes and I saw this vision and I saw that and I got a smell of mogra or lily or rose or I heard some celestial music, so many people do that, it has no importance. So this is like a warning from Baba to each one of us, that if at all we do confront such an experience, know that it is an experience perhaps of the inner planes, but in itself, by itself, it has no experience. That experience has to help me, it should encourage me to move forward. If that is the result of that experience, then the experience has served its purpose. If that experience makes me feel very dull and satisfied, now I'm satisfied, I have reached my goal, then it is actually,
Disservice.
yeah, it is of disservice to us. And that is why Baba keeps on saying, except for the experience of God realization, all other experiences are in the domain of illusion. Go ahead.
Light self Prakash. Yeah.
Yeah, Prakash.
Now, if a perfect realized Salik by his nazar stops a limited mind, the limited mind becomes unlimited, and the same
At the
at the
same,
and
chalega. At the same moment,
at the same moment realizes self. Nirvikalpa
sorry.
Samadhi.
In other words, there is no way in which we can achieve the goal unless helped by a living perfect master or the avatar. You cannot go on your own. You can do any kind of spiritual gymnastics, meditation, concentration, nama, japa, tapa, any kind of austerities, penances. It may help you to tread the path and to even reach up to the sixth plane of consciousness, which is the highest plane so far as the illusion is concerned. But from the sixth to the seventh, from the illusion to reality, from the dream state to the awake state, from the nothing state to the everything state, if you from the ignorance to knowledge, from dvaita, that means dui, that means duality, to unity, that is the span which you cannot jump over unless helped by a living perfect master or the avatar who's the eternal living perfect master. That is very clearly told by Baba. And if a perfect master really, if his glance, if his gaze, if his nazar falls on you, that nazar, then in a moment you can go from wherever you are to where he wants you to be. That means in a split second you can realize God. Your limited false eye instantaneously gets transformed into the unlimited real eye. Baba uses the word unlimited false eye, but later on he says the real eye. In other words, you realize the I am God state in no time at all. You don't even realize that, oh, all of a sudden you have experience of God.
That is, unconsciously for the limited mind, the limited mind is made to cross all the seven planes and its manifestations in a second and made to stop. And thus, the limited mind is not aware of it. But
Then that means the limited, it may be a very rare occurrence where the perfect master's nazar falls on a very gross limited mind and he realizes God immediately. But what Baba is saying, that that is possible, that is possible. And the mind does not even know. The limited mind does not even know. All of a sudden it experiences unlimitedness or infinity.
but when it returns to its limited state, it passes through experiences, these planes and their manifestations, and knows it has realized.
Self. Now,
It has realized.
realize, yeah, the word is self. Okay, anyway. So, what Baba says is that if that soul, I'm just adding a little bit, is destined to get back the consciousness of the rest of the planes, most souls, Baba says, I'm just digressing a little bit, most souls, the moment they realize God, they reach God realization, drop their body immediately. Why? Because the whole purpose, the sole purpose of the body was to realize God. And now the purpose is served, so you just drop the body. Baba gives somewhere an example, it may not be exactly for this particular reason, but I do remember that you use a cup and a saucer to have chai. like how Rakesh has it, you know. So you have chai. After finishing the chai, what do? Do you hold on to the cup and saucer the whole day? No. You just lay it aside. You just put it aside. So in the same way, the body is like a cup and saucer, which is to be used in order to consume God. Which in other words, you actually consume God. Like when Baba says it somewhere, where Baba says that what is the experience of that drop soul? The experience of that drop soul is that the drop swallows the ocean. The drop swallows the ocean and announces, declares, I am the ocean. So, in the same way, once the God realization takes place, the body is dropped. Some souls may retain it for a few days, for a few hours, or for a few days, like that, depending upon their own past destiny. Baba says it's all destiny. Some soul may remain in the I am God state, but they never come back to the mental, the subtle, and the gross consciousness, retaining the God consciousness. They never come back, and they are known as Mazube Kamil. That means they are Mazubs or Brahmi Bhut. That means they experience I am God state. They experience infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite bliss, but they have no experience of the three worlds, the mental, the subtle, and the gross. They are Brahmi Bhuts, or they are also known as Mazube Kamil, or purely Mazubs. There are some souls who get back the consciousness. They are called saliks. When I say get back the consciousness, when I say they come back, it doesn't mean that they drop the body and are reincarnated. No, they are in the same body, but their consciousness now, retaining the God consciousness of I am God state, also regains the consciousness of the mental world, which comprises of plane 5 and 6, of the subtle world, which comprises of plane 4, 3, 2, and 1. As I explained earlier, fourth is like a go between the fifth and the third, and they also get the experience of the gross world. Fourth, they also get the experience of the gross world. They are known as saliks. They do not have duties to perform, but they are definitely helpful to humanity for people who serve them, etc., etc. Now, those again retaining God consciousness and regaining all the other planes ka consciousness, and also have duty to perform towards creation, towards the universe, more particularly towards humanity. They are only five, and they are called Sadgurus or perfect masters or Kutubs. Here Baba is using God realized Salik Guru. That's a terminology. So here what Baba is saying, Baba is trying to say is that what I understand is only those souls who are destined to regain their consciousness, at the time of regaining the consciousness, now they realize that I have become God. Why? Because at the time of becoming God, it happened in a split second. Their mind was absolutely unconscious. They did not even realize that I am God state, that I have become God. Only when they return on their return journey, they now realize, oh, I have become God. Got it? So can you read the last line again?
It passes through through experiences these planes and their manifestations and knows it has realized.
That means it did not experience the planes and the manifestation while going towards the God state. But now they are realizing it, experiencing it while coming down to the gross state. Retaining, mind you, always retaining God consciousness and regaining all those consciousness. Go ahead.
So, in the case of a realized mind, the following is the case. That is meaning case.
Barabar.
When it
It-
becomes spirit, that is stops. It sees the self, and when it returns to its working limit, it sees the body and the world when it likes, or the planes and their manifestations when it likes.
So here I'll just repeat. So in the case of a realized mind means what? Real I, God, mind stop, unlimited, infinite I. When it becomes spirit, obviously when the mind has now become spirit permanently, because the mind is not there at all, it stops. What stops? Mind stops. Then it sees the self. Obviously, now mind is not there. It has merged with the spirit. Spirit always sees the self, and therefore now the unlimited, infinite mind also sees the self. And when it returns to its working limit, that means now it is coming down to its working limit, it sees the body. That means, in short, what Baba is trying to say is that a realized being may choose to see the self or God and experience his godliness, or it may choose to see the body and the universe, or it may choose to see the planes of consciousness. In other words, that particular soul which has realized God is in all the planes of consciousness, is already God, and is also in all the bodies and all the minds and everything about the universe. In other words, it is in everything and everybody, and it can choose to experience whatever it wants to experience. It can experience I am God state. It can experience the state of a Pir who's on the sixth plane, or a Wali who's on the fifth plane, or a Mahayogi or a Kuber who's on the fourth plane, or the other plane aspirants on the third, second, first plane, or ordinary human
Yes.
body and mind. It can choose to experience everything, but remember well always that it is one with God and experiences God realization at all times, irrespective of what it chooses to see at that particular point in time.
But when it stops, it neither sees the body and the universe, nor the planes and the universe. And
In the
in
order
ordinary case,
of,
not
of,
real
of the not realized
realize
mind, there
the
are
mind
editorial marks there. Huh?
the
Okay.
mind sees the body and the universe only, but cannot see the seven planes.
Okay. So now what Baba is trying to say is that when the mind is only stopped, that is what I told. When the mind is only stopped, the first experience is I am God. There is no experience of the body and no experience of the universe when the mind is stopped. That means, as I told you earlier, he is a Brahmi Bhut, or you can call him a Mazube Kamil or a Mazub. That means he does not experience the body and the universe. But if he is coming down, then he can choose any one which I have already explained. And then Baba says, but a finite, limited, working mind only experiences, that we've already done, only experiences the body and the universe, and does not or cannot experience the planes of consciousness or the God state. I think we stop here for the time being because we've read quite a few